I'm having a hobbit party for my graduation because I'm a nerd. Okay. Hello there. You may call me Miss Introvert, and here on this channel we write, we edit, we learn, and we grow. And I am growing right along with you guys, so we're really all in the same boat. Today we're going to be talking about poetry explication. I know I said I'd make a video in one of my previous videos about poetry explication, and this is that video. Long time coming. Basically, poetry explication is where you take a poem and you analyze it, you read it through a bunch of times, and you look for the meaning. That's the main goal, is to look for the poem's meaning. It doesn't have to be like the meaning that the author came up with, because we're never gonna find that out unless we ask them, or unless they explain it in some sort of footnote, but it's just a way of looking for your own meaning in a poem. So yes, the day has finally come and I will tell you about poetry explication. But first, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you enjoy this channel and this content about introvert stuff and book writing and book plotting and character development and poetry. We have it all here on this channel, and by we, I mean me, which is not grammatically correct in the slightest. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and comment down below your poetry writing methods or poetry explication methods, or any poetry that you feel like you just want to get out into the comment section. I will read it, I will cheer you on, and if you want feedback, I will give it to you. I also have a couple of gigs on Fiverr where I will give you like real strong poetry critiques and some feedback, and I also have my mailing list where you can send me your poems and I will cheer you on. And if you're new here and didn't see the last two poetry videos I made since I returned to YouTube, give them a watch. Now let's get started. Number one is pretty simple. You read the poetry aloud. So find a quiet place and start reading it. You can also find a place in public and start reading it there too. People will look at you, but you'll be quoting poetry, so they'll inevitably appreciate it. If they don't, something's wrong. But that's step one. That's literally it. Read it aloud. Maybe read it silently multiple times if you are in a quiet library, but make sure to at least have a chance to read it aloud a couple times. Because this way you'll get to fully understand it and fully get into what the imagery is trying to say and what the different literary elements are trying to tell you. The speaker is trying to tell you. It's mostly the speaker, not the author, because the author kind of just puts, it's kind of just the art that's speaking to you, not so much the author. But it's poetry, so you're not gonna understand it on the first try. There are some exceptions, but usually with poetry, especially the olden times poetry, you're gonna want to read it a couple times. And you may think to yourself, like, oh, I'm a poetry expert and I know how to explicate poetry by reading it once. That's great, but if you really want to get the most out of it, read it many, many times. I know there's like some people that will read it over a long period of time and they'll just get more out of it every time they watch it. It's like watching a really good show. You know those really good shows that like you watch them once a year, or if you're like me, you watch them maybe twice a year, and you just notice something new every time you watch it, like Haunting of Hill House or Haunting of Bly Manor or Midnight Mass or anything by Mike Flanagan. You just watch it multiple times. Every time you see it, there's something new that catches your eye and just adds more to the show. Poetry is like that. You find something new every time you read it, so read it multiple times. So some of the things you're going to want to be looking for as you're reading it aloud are the rhythm, the rhyme scheme if it's not a free verse poem. If it is, you're going to want to be looking for the same things as you were in a rhyme scheme poem, so look for the imagery, look for the word choice. Why is the meter like this? Why is the iambic pentameter the choice for this poem? Whether you're reading a new poem from a new author or an old poem from Shakespeare, all of these things apply. So listen to how you're reading it. Listen to how you're pacing the poem. Listen to how the poem is paced. And that's why we're reading it aloud, because you want to know how it's paced. Is it a fast poem? Is it a slow poem? How are you reading it? And how is the poem making you read it? Once you have all that down, you can move on to the next step, which will get more into what you're going to be looking for. Because you're going to be, number two, taking notes. So just write whatever is coming into your head about the poem. Get a journal. I have an example journal. Get a journal. I actually won this for writing a poem. It was one of the poems at my school that won an award, so that was fun. I actually have yet to use it. I have so many journals. Frick. But get a journal, get a computer, get something to write on, get a napkin. We've all been there. Or just annotate the page that you're looking at. If you're not looking at a page poem, you're looking at Poetry Foundation, then get something to write on. and print out the poem, whatever you have to do to start annotating it, and just write out whatever's in your head about the poem. Because now that you've read it out loud a bunch of times, you're going to be able to find out what's going on with the speaker and what's going on with the poem, and you're going to be able to translate that from your head to a page that you can actually see. What is the speaker talking about? What is significant about the imagery chosen? Why are the stanzas split up? Why is this just one chunk of text? What is the story? Is there a story? What literary elements are you noticing? Again, unless it's a library book, annotate the frick out of it. That way, if you're reading it through again, it'll just start to come together as you look at your little notes on the sides. Keep writing about it until you come across some sort of meaning, and maybe even try to write that meaning into a coherent sentence so that it just makes sense when you look back at your notes. It's helpful when your notes make sense. I know that as a writer of a 500-page novel. Coming soon. And you might come up with multiple meanings, so write multiple sentences about each of the meanings and start to narrow down which one you think speaks most to you about what the poem is saying. And there could be multiple meanings that speak most to you about it, because poems are just so vast, and our imagination and our analytical skills can get very vast. You don't want to go overboard, but you want to have a good sense of what this poem is talking about. There are some times where you can go overboard. You don't want to go there, especially if you're in a class and you're trying to get this explication paper done for a grade. But that is the main question you're trying to ask as you're taking notes. What is the meaning of the poem? What is the poem trying to communicate to the reader? Those are the main questions. Number 3, find the meaning. Now you've read it over a bunch, taken notes about the meter, the word choice, and the imagery, and the story and the structure, and you can pick out a meaning or two from the poem. This is if you're using reader response theory, of course, because these are just possible meanings, because again, we can't actually know what the author meant when they were writing the poem. You can ask them if you happen upon them, or you can email them if they're alive, which is fun. I got to see and hear from poets my age who were also in college and just writing for Sigma Tau Delta. I got to present at Sigma Tau Delta my poetry and listen to other people's poetry. It was awesome. Oh, 10 out of 10 would recommend. Again, if you're back to the publishing poetry video, if you are given a chance to send your poetry somewhere for it to be accepted to a conference, definitely do that. So again, back to the meaning, this is really hard, especially if you're writing for a class or for a paper. You might not be sure what the meaning is, and your peers and your profs are going to be looking at this, and you feel like if you write down the meaning, it might be wrong, and you're kind of self-conscious about your writing sometimes. No, just me? Okay. Anyway, but if you've followed these steps through, you should be good to go. You've clearly defined by reading it through and taking notes and annotating and writing coherent sentences what is actually going on in this poem. And with those sentences and with those notes, you can just kind of transform it into a paper. It's nice to have these notes, especially if you're writing a paper. And if you are in a class and you guys are presenting your explications, then that's even better, because it might be scary to know that there's going to be students that have different thoughts about the poem than you do. But it's actually really helpful because you get to see multiple sides of what people think of a certain poem. So yeah, that is poetry explication. Not too complicated. Of course, it depends on the poem, but that is how you do it. Pretty simple. Thank you for watching. Once again, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Comment down below your poetry writing methods, your poetry explication methods, and any of your poetry that you feel brave enough to submit. Again, we have the mailing list and we have Fiverr, so check out those links. They're in the description and they're on the homepage of my YouTube channel. That'll be my dogs right as I'm about to do the last line. That's so awesome. Thank you again for watching, and stay basic. Okay, bye.